As we approach a date, we are all to express our gratitude.
As Thanksgiving fast approached, Joseph W. Brady began this interview thankful for the outcome of two ballot measures in particular.
Well, Terry, I think from a statewide standpoint, I think that the Prop 15 issue that dealt with the unwind of Prop 13 was surprising. There was a lot of money spent on that. I think that by the time we figured that out, about $150 million. By the time that people see this in a couple days, I'm really hoping that the Victorville City Council race is over. It's real nip and tuck between third and fourth. Both Ryan McCachran and Leslie Irving are going back and forth. So at the end of the day, the people in Victorville want to have, they kind of want to have a winner. The 1% sales tax it was up today by 9 votes. I am really hoping and praying. I am hoping and praying for Keith Metzler and for the city and for Deborah Jones and the council that thing gets done. We need to get that done. I think that it was no surprise that I think that Measure V lost as big as it did. I think there were those in Springville Lake that never had an idea that the residents had won this mistrust for the association, had a whole lot of mistrust for the formation committee, did not feel that their questions were being answered, and they voted their conscience. I just had an interaction with one of the committee members today. So to set the record straight, I prepared an email to the formation chairman and the vice chairman and many of the more prominent members of the committee, excluding 2 members, and they'll both know who they are because they didn't get the email. And then they were people that tried to attack me on Facebook, and it was kind of stupid. So that just went out 3 days ago, and it also had a copy of my request for the Greg Kristovich consulting contract for the acquisition of the country club on it. And I wanted them to have that for a couple reasons. One, my email said to this group of prominent Spring Valley people, including the Verhagens that have one of the Facebook pages, it's time that we get behind this. It's time that we move forward. It's time that we try to best understand the contract with Mr. Kristovich, how the contract with Mr. Kristovich came about. Did the association actually go out and do an RFQ, request for qualification, or did they do a request for proposal from multiple different golf consultants? And how did that come about? Mr. Kristovich, you and I are going to have a conversation. I don't know who you are. I know you got a great list of references. I think the bigger question is there's a golf committee, or there's a committee within Spring Valley Lake, and the president of the association, the president's wife, and the president's mother are on the same committee. That to me is just a conflict. The one thing you don't do, and I'm elected, I'm president of the board at our great college. Everything you do, you have to watch your potential conflicts because people are always kind of pointing a finger. So the email that was sent out also had a copy of my request to the association. So I made the request for this contract on October 22nd, my birthday, and I got it on November 17th. So if you add the number of days, about 25 days to get a copy of something. That is, I don't think Alfred Logan, general manager, or Janine Beam, or any of the board members, I don't think that's how you want to treat your residents, because again, it says that there's something wrong. So my email said, the election's behind us, let's sit down ASAP, let's figure out how we sell this proposal to the residents. We have to get, in order for this golf course proposal to go through, it's got to be fair for everybody, it's got to be equitable for everybody, it's got to be a financially balanced plan, and it's got to be fair. And we got to get 66 2/3% of the owners. So also let me go on record and say this. About 2 months ago, our firm, the Bradco Companies, tendered a letter of interest, not a letter of intent, or a purchase and sale on behalf of a golf course operator that owns a tad short of 20 golf courses. We know the operator well. They would be a good fit on up here. We sent that down to Mr. Tom Bennison, who's with Club Corp, a super guy, and he said to me, Joe, we're currently negotiating with somebody. And I said to him, fine, if that negotiation falls apart, feel free to accept this. Well, Terry, he called me the other night. He's a real gentleman. And he said to me, Joe, we're working closely with the board at Spring Valley Lake. We really want to work with the board, and we want to get this thing through. And I said to him, Tom, thanks. He had called me, I think it was on Monday the 16th. We had a nice, probably 35, 40-minute call. But I said to him, I said, are you aware that we just went through probably the hottest election we've ever had in Spring Valley Lake in its 51 years, outside the closed gated deal that was in, I think, 1989. And that was won by the people who want to close the community. It was overturned by a judge. And I said, we have to heal a lot of feelings, and we need to harness a whole lot more transparency, and we need to figure out a way to work together. He was not aware of this at all. So I said to him, I said, to be fully transparent, I had asked for Mr. Kristovich's contract. He speaks very, very highly of Greg. He said, Greg has taken on, a lot of great communities. He just closed one, I think, called Ridge down in, I think, Florida. So there's no doubt that he has a capability. The question is, are we trying to do this too quick? Do we have the right public relations firm? Are the board of directors and the committee willing to go knock on literally every single door? I think Spring Valley Lake is 50% owners and 50% renters. So how are we going to contact those owners and say, this is a really important deal? Oh, by the way, it's a balanced plan. Spring Valley Country Club, I think, in my professional opinion, I was a partner in a golf course in Lompoc, California called La Prisma. I believe that Spring Valley Lake needs about $2 million of improvements. It's a great golf course. It's a Robert Trent Jones senior golf course, a great golf course. But the trees need to be trimmed, and the bunkers, and the superintendent who handles that golf course has done just an incredible job. He's got 5 people working. When I came to Spring Valley Lake in 1988 and competed in 1989 and 1990 at Pinehurst and represented, we had 17 employees maintaining that golf course. So you go from 17 to 5, and I mean, they just do an incredible job out there. I mean, they work so hard. I mean, I wave at them, I honk at them all the time. So I think if people that watch this, reach out to your board members, and maybe Mr. Logan. Let's make all this really transparent. In the contract that Mr. Kristovich has, he talks about the marketing plans going to be done by emails. Well, I can absolutely tell you, I would absolutely bet, I'd bet the ranch that Spring Valley doesn't have 2,000 emails of owners that are currently here, because I've asked for reports in the past and you can't get them because they're sacrilegious. When we do emails, Terry, our clients get a full report of how many open, how many clicks, because they know by performance. So I would tell Greg, we need to spend some serious money in educating people. There's no doubt he probably has the capability of helping sell the plan. The question is, are we going to be able to sell the plan to 66 and 2/3 of the owners when there's a sense of distrust, when there's a sense that there's a clique of people running Spring Valley Lake, and whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter. That's what people told, all of us, Kelly Marshall and Cheryl Bluey and a bunch of friends, and we all stood out in front of Spring Valley Lake handing out flyers for the election, and we heard a whole bunch of stuff that we had just never heard before. So I would ask the board to really make this transparent. You're going to need a whole lot of community meetings, and I don't know what we're going to do with COVID now. Terry, that's something really bothers me. I mean, the timing of this could not be worse for the residents and for Club Corp and for Greg Kristovich and for the board of directors if we're going to go back in this period of time with COVID. So I hope that we can get through some of the challenges. I think that we will. And that's my update. I'm glad the election is over. I'm glad that people in Spring Valley Lake spoke very, very, very clearly. What is interesting about the vote? So if you look at the final tally, and we're within days, Melissa Eichmann works for the Registrar's office, and we talked to her. They're going to need every single hour up until December 1st to be sure that every vote in the county has been taken care of. But if you go take a look, you just go to San Bernardino County register voters, you go to election results, go all the way down, and Measure V's at the very bottom. There's a couple numbers in there that are interesting. An undervote. So we had actually 83% as of yesterday of the residents, the registered voters in Spring Valley Lake, there are 5,811, voted. That's incredible. That is just incredible. But if you take out the undervotes, so the undervotes are people that said, I'm not going to vote for Measure V. I'm going to vote for everything else, so I'm just not going to vote for Measure V. So there were 300 and some odd. Then there were 5 that were overvotes. So an overvote means they voted both ways. They said, we agreed yes, we agreed no. So as Melissa said, we have to then make a decision based on their intent. So let's say, Terry, that you checked off a yes, and you went to scratch it off, and you put the X on no, then they have to take a look at the intent. So that was rather interesting. So if you take that back, roughly 76% of the registered voters voted. So you go from 83 to 76. It's a pretty interesting dynamic. So I'm really hoping that if the consultant can come up with a plan that makes a lot of sense, and we can figure out the money to take care of the country club and how to buy it, and the deal is fair and equitable, the biggest hurdle now is how do we get in front of 66 and 2/3% of the owners to say this is a great deal. It will maintain Spring Valley Lake. It's gonna take us that next level where we should be. It's a gorgeous golf course. It's got great employees. David Ruzzi is a great manager down there. I love him to death, although I'm no longer a member down there. He's just a great guy, and I want to see his dream come true of you're really getting a hold of this and be able to do something where he doesn't have his hands are tied, so there's not much he can do. So if anybody has any questions about this, any comments, feel free to call my cell, 760-954-4567, between 8 and 5. I don't typically answer it afterwards. You can text me at my cell, 760-954-4567, or you can email me, and Terry will put the email up on top. Please put something in the subject line. If you don't, it gets automatically kicked out of our server, and we never see it. So everything that goes on the server has to have a subject line, or it just gets kicked out. So, and I'll respond to anybody. I'll meet with anybody. I am sending back a separate message to the board of directors talking about that we all need to come together. We need to put this last fight behind us. We need to be fully transparent about all the meetings that we have. And with that, Terry, there's one other thing that I want to do, and it's really important to me, and I'll tell you why. Everybody that serves on the board serves at the pleasure of the residents, and they don't get paid. And it's not an easy job. And one of the board members, I know some of the board members extremely well. I know Brian Hurst and Bill Scott really well. And then I know Robert Reed very well. Robert and I went back to the days of some major issues that we had many years ago. And I'm very, very concerned that the board doesn't necessarily want to hear him. That's my personal feeling. I believe that they don't listen necessarily to what he says. And I think that even most of the board members would say, I'm sure that even Brian Bickert would say, there's probably not a more passionate individual that has been on the board in the last 20 years for Spring Valley Lake than Robert Reed Jr. Robert Reed Jr. built that Veterans monument next to Spring Valley Country Club out of his pocket. I think he spent $15,000 last time I talked to him. He said, Joe, I still got $9,000 to go. Not very many people do things like that except for Robert Reed. But I know the other night he went to read a statement that I had heard about, and it got muffled. So I'm going to read this statement, and hopefully everybody can just bear with me a little bit. I'm not overstepping my bounds. I have the right to do this as a private citizen within Spring Valley Lake, and my constitutional rights within the United States of America afford me the right to do it. But I know that Robert was a little miffed when he heard from people, so I went and double-checked with a couple people I know were watching that meeting, and when he spoke, he was somewhat muffled. So I'm not going to say that somebody played with the volume. Maybe Robert had the speech in front of the microphone and he didn't get heard. So I want to read this. I'm going to read it very carefully because I think it does. I think it says a lot, and I'm not trying to stir the pot. I'm trying to deliver a message I think that all the residents in Spring Valley should know. So this is dated November 17th, and it says Spring Valley Lake Open Board Meeting Statement. Spring Valley Lake Directors Violations. The first one is the Davis-Sterling Act. The second one is the Open Meeting Act. The third is a violation of the oath of office. The fourth is Civil Code 4090, and the last one is Corporate Code 7511. It says on November 6, 2024, Spring Valley Lake Association board members, with premeditated and deliberate thought, without prior required notification to Spring Valley Lake Association membership and fellow board members, attended a Spring Valley Lake Association committee meeting. This is a direct violation of the Davis-Sterling Act, the Open Meeting Act, Civil Code 4090, Corporate Code 7511, and a prevarication to the Spring Valley Lake membership of their oath of office, in parentheses, an oath reviewed, edited, and insisted upon by the attending directors. Second paragraph. The attending board of directors and general manager, who is also in attendance, were all aware, via instructions from the Spring Valley Lake attorney, I'll say that's Mr. Stephen Tinley, who's down in Rancho Santa Margarita, that no more than 3 board members may attend Spring Valley Lake meetings. If more than 3 members are in attendance, it establishes a quorum and therefore constitutes an open meeting, requiring proper membership and director notification, thus allowing Spring Valley Lake members to attend. Consequently, any action taken at the meetings, any decisions made at stated meeting, by definition, are null and void. Deliberate and premeditated violations are subject to damages up to and including the recall of the directors. The defeat of Measure V by 70% demonstrates the lack of Spring Valley Lake membership trust in our community. The directors' premeditated action contributes to that norm. Following that pattern, our Spring Valley Lake SVLCC initiative has been damaged. Such action should be cause for reevaluation of the Spring Valley Lake Board of Directors office holders. Minutes of the attending meeting are public. Club Corp is aware of this non-transparency action and may now be talking to the letter of interest. Well, I think the letter of interest that he's alluding to is the letter of interest that we had done. So he signs a Robert Reed, Spring Valley Lake, Tract 8101, Lot 27. His cell number is 760-403-0391, and his home address is in Apple Valley. Terry, what's I think interesting about Robert Reed's speech that he prepared, and he told me this after the fact, he had apparently sent this to the board members before the meeting. So I thought that was real smart. But what he said was really surprising. And again, I verified this with a couple of people that apparently watched it. Nobody, not one of the board members, made any comments about this, which I thought if he was wrong, they should have at the time corrected him and said, no, there were not 4 committee members there. What he's talking about, this private meeting, I've actually seen the minutes. The minutes were put out. There are all kinds of people on there. There are some, I don't even know who they are, but I know that, the question that the person that sent to me was, did Mr. Becker, the president of the association, have his wife and his mom at the same meeting? And I guess the committee, the secretary is his best friend, supposedly. I don't know who the person's name is, but I think what Robert's trying to do is get to the bottom of this, and I think trying to silence him will kind of backfire. I will say this, so I want to go on the record. I have not had a chance, Terry, to check I have not had a chance to check the Davis-Bacon Act, the Open Meeting Act, the violation of the oath of office, the Civil Code 4090, Corporate Code 7511. So, Mr. Tinley, if you want to write me another cease and desist letter and waste, a couple $100 or $1,000 of Spring Valley Lake's money, I wouldn't do it, because I make no guarantees, warranties, or representations on behalf of Joseph W. Brady that I have checked anything. All I want to do is I wanted to read this, and I thought it was important to read it for not me and not for Robert Reed, but for the 4,215 lot owners and the 12,000 residents that I think live in Spring Valley Lake. So with that, I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I look forward to bringing you up to date after we go through the Mr. Kristovich's contract and reach out to him and hopefully have a great conversation, and hopefully can give you some updates that will be beneficial to Spring Valley Lake, its members, Spring Valley Country Club, its members, Mr. Kristovich, Club Corp, David Pillsbury, Mr. Dennison, and we'll go from there. Thanks.